Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media, 17 miles away from Madison Square Garden. It's such a joy to be with you. It's Friday, everybody, TGIF. Our phone number, if you want to join us, 833-482-5337-8334-Valdez. And President Trump has made his mind on the first Republican debate in the primary, and he's not showing up. Nope. El Trompito has decided he is going to join former Fox News anchor Tucker Carlson for an interview on Tucker on Twitter. And they're going to do what they do. And again, this is him being a tactician. He realizes Carlson has this mega platform. I think the last video got something like, 17 million views in the first, I don't know how long, hour or so. It was something ridiculous like that. It was amazing. So he knows he's going to get the reach. And if they're watching him with Tucker, they're definitely not watching the other guys, right? So you kind of split the baby there. So good for El Trompito and his decision. I'm looking forward to actually watching both of those. And this is an interesting one. A hot mic has caught President Biden muttering, politely ask the press to leave before the event ending abruptly. President Biden was caught on this hot mic on Friday during a panel with world leaders from Korea and Japan asking the press to leave, according to a recording of the summit. And again, this is according to the Daily Caller. The president was meeting with President Yoon Suk-yeol of the Republic of Korea and Prime Minister Kishida Fumio of Japan at Camp David on Friday to discuss security concerns in the Pacific. So that's El Trompito, right? He's, Joe El Baboso Biden, excuse me. He's there at his summit, and we have some audio of the summit. I want to give you a little instance of what exactly happened. Listen to this. Joe Biden at today's Camp David summit.
If I seem like I'm happy, it's because I am. This has been a great, great meeting.
So that's Joe Biden. And I wanted you to hear it so you could hear the energy and the charisma in his voice, because he's just so, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? Sleepy Joe, Sleepy Joe. I think that's the words I'm looking for, Sleepy Joe. But that's what Joe Biden was doing today, having this little summit where he was half asleep and entertaining these guys. And eventually he says to someone that's off camera, politely ask everyone to leave. And the White House recording of the event abruptly ends. I will tweet this out if you want to see the video of him saying politely. You can go ahead and watch that at Rich Valdez with an S on all of the social media, but in particular on Twitter. Now, what else did I want to bring up? There was something else I wanted to address on here. Let me go back to my notes here. We talked about this last night, but there's an article out today highlighting Eric Adams. Of course, Curtis Sliwa joined us last night. But New York Democrats are deathly afraid of a looming political disaster over the migrant crisis, as they call it. That's according to Fox News. Here's the thing. I agree with them. I think Mayor Adams, the reason he's changed his whole tune is because African Americans in New York, who by and large voted for him, feel like they are left out in the cold. They were like, hey, we stepped up for you. What have you done for us? And the answer is nothing, right? There are plenty of people. And to be frank, when you look at the homeless situation in New York City, many of them are African American. They no longer have the homeless hotels. And I'm not defending any of these policies. I'm just telling you, Once those hotels that were like 8th Avenue, Times Square area, that the city was renting them and putting homeless in them. Now they're putting migrants in them and displacing the homeless. So it's clear to me that they're getting the short end of the stick. And I think they're bringing it up to Eric Adams, and he doesn't like it. And to me, the reason I focus on this, yeah, sure, I'm a New Yorker, but it's not, I realize many of you aren't New Yorkers and could care less. Many of you just say, well, you know what, you keep voting for those clowns, so that's what you're going to get. You know, play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. I get that. But the reason I bring it up is because I believe that this type of policy, this type of warped thinking, this is coming to a neighborhood near you, lamentably. That's ultimately how I see it going. This, if this isn't checked, if Adams doesn't bring the national attention to making some sort of resolution, I think every other small town or medium-sized city is going to get the same exact, maybe not as many as he did, because New York is a big city, but for sure they're going to get more than what their quote-unquote fair share. So I think this is a story we have to keep our eye on, because if we don't, I think you already know what's going to happen if we don't. Anyway, I want to remind you of, what do I have here? I'm very disheveled this evening, so forgive me. Oh, it's National Radio Day. That's what I've been trying to figure out what I want to talk about. So on Sunday, it's National Radio Day, and we're going to get into a little bit about what National Radio Day is. We're going to be celebrating it all evening tonight, and that's what I wanted to talk about. National Radio Day. How can I forget? That was my lead-in. Jeez. Thank God it's Friday. And right after this, we're going to bring in a fan favorite on this program, Michael Harrison. He's the publisher of Talkers Magazine, the Talk Radio Bible. And we're going to discuss all sorts of facets of radio and what National Radio Day looks like for him from his perspective. But then we're going to talk to another amazing radio host, and TV host, actually. Bill Cunningham is scheduled to be with us after that, and I want to talk with him about, A, the news of the day, and B, National Radio Day. And then, of course, coinciding with National Radio Day this month is the beginning of the 50th anniversary of hip-hop music. And somebody I've met years ago doing a fundraiser for Hurricane Sandy is a platinum recording artist who is a hip-hop recording artist who became a city councilman in Newark, New Jersey. So we're going to have him on the program a little bit later to talk about the 50th anniversary of hip-hop and National Radio Day. So we've got lots to discuss. Of course, your calls and more, plenty of articles, and I've got lots of really good audio as well. So it's Friday night. Don't move a muscle. Pull up a chair. Make yourself comfortable. Put the volume up a little bit. We're here straight till 1 o'clock this morning. This is just the beginning. Don't move a muscle.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Rich Valdez, who, again, will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to him.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, familia, welcome back. It is the weekend eve of National Radio Day. And again, this was started way back when to celebrate the amazing convention of radio. And radio is an amazing thing, something that I fell in love with some years ago. And someone else that loves radio, that's been in radio for a really long time, he's the publisher of the Talk Radio Bible known as Talkers Magazine. Michael Harrison is with us. Michael Harrison, welcome, sir.
Rich Valdez, it is a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for having me on the program, especially to talk about, of all things, radio. It's great.
Oh, you bet. And, I wanted to... I said, I want to make sure that we don't overlook National Radio Day and just dedicate one segment to it and kind of keep it moving, because it's kind of what we do, right? I mean, the radio's one of those things that to me is incredibly strong and popular today, yet overlooked way more than it ought to be, in my opinion. What say you?
I agree. Radio is far more popular, far more pertinent. It's a utility. It's an entertainment vehicle. It's informational. It keeps people company, especially nighttime radio, very important emotionally to many people. But because there's so much noise in the world right now, I mean, the world is getting noisier by the second, that even radio, one of the iconic main media platforms of all of our lifetimes, over 100 years now, even radio has to compete against the noise to say, we're here. And, a lot of the more recent technical and media innovations get a lion's share of the attention. But you're right, radio is overlooked, but it doesn't mean it's not being used and that it's not vital, alive, and well.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Michael Harrison, I want to remind folks that Talkers Magazine, it's probably not just, as its moniker, the Bible of talk radio, but it is also really the premier, like the industry standard for all things spoken word radio, because there aren't a tremendous amount of resources out there, and you managed to pull all of them into Talkers. And if we could talk about that for a second, what's it like, I guess, dealing in an industry that's rapidly changing, where it's becoming streaming, it became podcast, it reinvented itself as radio again, and it's evolved so many times, yet it still remains, in my opinion, radio.
Well, this is the key thing, and it's very hard to define. What is radio? And I always tell that to my fellow professionals and to colleagues in the radio industry who are obsessed with the problems that you're talking about. Everything is changing. We're streaming. We're digital. There's satellite radio. Right. There's delayed broadcast, podcasting. And I always say, don't lose sight of what radio is. Because if you understand that radio is more than the appliances that carry it, it's more than the FM radio device, it's more than the AM radio device. It's a state of mind. It's an aesthetic. It's an art form with a tremendous history, and it's got many different phases and dimensions to it. If you understand that, if you love it, without having to define it, if you know what it is, radio will exist no matter what the technology is. But I fear about that. I have fears about that. I don't know whether or not even the people in radio, or a large number of them, understand what radio is. And I hope that you don't ask me the next question, so what is radio? Because as a radio guy yourself, you understand that this is a constantly changing definition, and yet it has to remain the same in terms of what we consider this audio medium to be, that even now is more than audio. Radio has a visual side to it as well. So it's a confusing situation, but I think that seriously, not to say don't ask me what radio is, I think that you have to look at what's consistent about it. It's an audio-based medium. It's ubiquitous. You can get it everywhere now, especially with the World Wide Web. And it is a combination of show business, entertainment, information, as I said before, companionship, and public safety. It's news, it's serious, and it's silly. But I think that one of the things that really helps define it is its grassroots. For radio to really have stayed successful, it's always had to be a step ahead of the other mass media and really reflect, the language of the schoolyard, the cutting edge of science, the most controversial, edgy political controversies. And I can go on and on. It's got to be the voice of the people, and it has to be a bit of all of the things that I mentioned.
Yeah, without question, I think you're right with respect to the evolution of radio and how it changes. I don't know, daily, weekly, monthly. Every time you get a new newsletter or another email, there's a new take on it. But I think something you mentioned that I want to zero in on is you said it was companionship, and I think that's a huge part of what radio is. At least that's how it was taught to me. Companionship, entertainment, information, and those elements I think don't really change. And it's interesting to me sometimes people will say to me, wow, so you do like old school radio. That's interesting. Like, why not a podcast? And I do a podcast, but, my response to them is, radio is way more fun. It's so much more fun when you can be live with somebody and connect with people, in so many different places because of a very powerful signal. And to me, I look at podcast as a wonderful medium as well, but it's a medium where you don't have the same pressures, right? Podcast, you can, I guess, record it as live, but it's really never live unless you're podcasting something that was live. And to me, the live aspect of radio is the brilliance of it. It's where you get to create that theater of the mind and really connect with people at a whole different level, using a whole different part of their brain that they never use when they're watching television. And you're able to connect with people at a level where they get to know you as a person, as a personality, as opposed to just another talking head on television. And,
wow, so very well said. You're right. You're absolutely right.
And I only learned this being a talking head on television occasionally and doing radio. And when you meet people, it fascinates me. Like, some people say, "Oh, I saw you on TV," and it's usually a very quick conversation. And if I was once buying something and someone heard my voice and said, "You sound just like Rich Valdez," and I laughed, and they were like, "Oh my God, it's you!" And I was like, "Yeah, guilty as charged." But they were behind me online to pay, and I thought, "Wow, that's amazing that you could just hear me talk to a cashier and be like, I know that guy from the radio." And to me, that is such a way more intimate. It's almost like if your family were around, right? You'd be like, "Oh, it sounds like my dad. It sounds like my brother." Those are usually the only people that you could really recognize by voice, Michael Harrison.
That's very interesting. You're right, and what you're touching upon is the fact that neurologically, the taking in of information through the ear, oral information, sound through the ear into the brain, is a very different process than taking in information through the eye, through the visual aspect of the brain. It's a whole different lobe, and not to diminish the importance of a picture being worth 1,000 words and the lure of video and something that you see, the power of vision. I don't want to diminish that, but it should be remembered, and people who are responsible for creating radio should remember that the real ace in their deck is the power, the influential, memorable, intimate, as you said, power of the sound of information through the ear, not the eye. And as you point out, when people hear that, especially coming through radio, as opposed to somebody just talking to you live in a one-to-one conversation, the magic, if you will, of radio, and I do think magic is a key word here in terms of talking about radio, makes it so that it not only gets into your head, but it stays there. And if I may say, that's one of the reasons radio is such an effective advertising medium, because especially talk radio, and people are paying attention to it. They're paying attention. It's not in the background, music. It's not. They're paying attention. It goes in. It stays there.
You're right. It's the story. Folks, we're on with Michael Harrison, publisher of Talkers Magazine, the Talk Radio Bible. Check them out at talkers.com. He's coming right back with us in the next segment. We're going to talk about artificial intelligence and how it is making its way into radio. I don't know if I'm too happy about that, but we'll discuss. Folks, don't go anywhere. I am Rich Valdez. Our phone number, 833-4-VALDEZ. Don't move a muscle.
I've known you several years now. I want the audience to know what a wonderful, decent person you are. Very, very thoughtful.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And listen to this. About 8 in 10 Americans ages 12 and older listen to terrestrial radio in a given week. And that's here in the United States. 82% of Americans aged 12 and older listen to terrestrial radio in a given week, according to Nielsen Media Research data published by the Radio Advertising Bureau. Weekly listenership dropped from 89% in 2019 to 83% in 2020. a decline that coincided with the beginning of the coronavirus outbreak. But still, 8 in 10 is a huge number. Now, our guest is the publisher of Talkers Magazine, Michael Harrison. Michael Harrison, does it surprise you to hear that 8 in 10 listen to radio in a given week?
No, not really. I expect that to be the case, and the fact that radio has lost some audience doesn't disturb me too much because everybody's losing audience because
Right.
there's so much more competition. I mean, look at we had a couple of big movies the past couple of weekends with, Barbie and Oppenheimer, but that was a news event. I mean, the fact that
Right.
there was a big movie was a news event. Think about that. Newspapers have it's no secret they've lost their circulation. And major television shows, once played to audiences of 20, 30 million people, now they can get 8 million people. That's considered a lot. When you look at the numbers on news talk cable television, sometimes it's shocking how low those numbers are compared to certain radio shows. So everybody's losing audience because there's so much more, there's so many more pieces to the media pie. But radio is certainly holding its own. There's some 1,500 radio stations in America broadcasting, and there are radios all over the place. And aside from the fact that people listen to commercials on it, it's basically free. It's easy. You turn it on. There it is. You don't have to deal with internet stuff and buffering and things that intimidate a lot of people. And it's very, very important in places where they don't have internet. Internet is not totally, 100% operative in all parts of the country. So, no, I'm not surprised that the numbers are so impressive when one would think, nobody's listening to the radio anymore if you listen to what some people say.
Something you mentioned was that the fact that the Barbie movie or Oppenheimer was a media event, and it's accurate. It's both accurate and funny. But the interesting part about it is that the reason that's such a big deal is because there's so few movies coming out because of the writer's strike and Hollywood being frozen, and the big issue that they have is artificial intelligence. And I've seen a few articles where there are some like music radio stations that are using AI DJs to announce records that are coming in, and there's no people. Like the whole thing is AI. And I think it's interesting, but when you're talking for a minute or two to introduce a song, I guess that makes sense. It could make sense is what I'm saying. But I don't know that AI could replace, long form talk radio programs like this one or any other. What's your take on AI coming into the realm?
Well, I think AI is changing the entire world. So anything that changes the world changes radio. And it's changing all kinds of art forms. It's changing literature. It's changing journalism. It's changing how they make movies, how they make music. So obviously there'll be radio stations that say, instead of having live people sitting and reading liner notes that are already written for them, we may as well, stick their voices into some type of computer and have somebody play the role of DJ on a keyboard. It's like playing a piano. It's ultimately it's going to come down to what kind of art you put into it. It's just another technological tool. It has the potential to be very artistic as long as we know how to finesse the computers, as long as we know how to talk to the artificial intelligence and create algorithms that really take it to a higher level, just like the paintbrush was a tool that changed the art of the day when artists used to paint on the cave walls with their fingers with pigment. And when somebody invented the paintbrush, they must have said, that's not art, that's a tool, that's cheating. So there's an old saying, I think McLuhan said it, that today's technology becomes tomorrow's art. I think we just have another case of that. The problem with AI is not that it's taken jobs away from disc jockeys. I think that's a deeper problem. The problem with AI is that it adds into the difficulty we have in discerning truth from fiction, that we don't know what's real anymore. Used to be, if you had a contract in writing, that meant somebody's word was legitimized. If you look at a picture, we have it on video, we have a recording of it. There was certain media that you could trust to be accurate. But when there no longer is any kind of legitimacy to any kind of media, that kids could do term papers that are fake, and you could get all kinds of videos in the mail that show politicians or people you know doing things that they never did. We live in an era of uncertainty as it is as to what's fake and what's real. This is going to take it exponentially into a darker zone, and that worries me. As well, there are a number of other dangers with AI, but in terms of the radio industry, have fake disc jockeys and fake people on the air at your own peril. That's one of the reasons that music radio lost its ownership of music. Its ownership of music culture in America was because they got rid of live presenters, disc jockeys, musical experts, people that were able to give life to the music and create a situation that we call music discovery. They gave it up. Many of the greatest DJs moved over to talk radio and stopped playing records completely and just used their God-given ability to talk. So I hope that radio doesn't think that we no longer have to have the human touch. That would be a huge mistake.
Yeah, I agree with that. We were just talking about that the other night with a psychologist who was explaining that you can't use AI for therapy, even if they say you can, because it just lacks all that human aspect to it.
Right.
And,
but I will say one thing. I will say one thing real quick. A point I'd like to make, that so much of conversation today, even on this wonderful medium of talk radio that we love, so much of it is unoriginal. So much of it are what we call talking points, that I think that within the realm of talking points, and so many people on the radio, and I'm not bad-rapping our own medium, I'm just saying it like it is. A lot of the conversations that you hear, there's nothing original, especially the left-right political debates that go on. This one says this, and then one goes, well, what about that, and what about this? It's not outside the realm of possibility, Rich, that all that could be programmed into a computer with nice, realistic-sounding voices, and you could listen to what sounds like a conversation that sounds very much like two live people interacting with each other, spewing off all kinds of information that's already programmed by algorithms that are just absolutely on top of it, and you really wouldn't know. Do you believe in climate change? No, I don't believe in climate change. Well, facts indicate, is radio dying? Well, 8 out of 10 people listen to radio. It can go up and back like a ping pong match, and you'd never know because there are very few original ideas that are used today in media, as well as talk radio, talk television, and many other things that we deal with.
Interesting point, Michael Harrison. I'm hoping that that isn't the case anytime soon. But folks, we're on with Michael Harrison. He's the publisher of Talkers Magazine. And when I was a kid, I grew up in Brooklyn. So I used to go visit my titi, my aunt, in the Bronx. She lived off of Gun Hill Road. And so if somebody tells me Gun Hill Road, I think of a street in the Bronx. But Michael Harrison might have a different take on Gun Hill Road, and he's going to explain a little bit more about it on the way back. Folks, if you have a question, you want to give us a call, join the national conversation, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And we continue our discussion with Michael Harrison, who is the publisher of Talkers Magazine, talkers.com. Check them out. The point that I made before we went to break was that I know Gun Hill Road as a street in the Bronx, and, where I had an aunt that lived close by. But Michael Harrison, tell us the significance of Gun Hill Road to you.
Well, Rich Valdez, I grew up in Brooklyn, too. I was born there, and Gun Hill Road is a street in the Bronx, and the reason that I know it is because I Back in the old days when I used to do a radio show every day in the morning on WNEW-FM in New York, I was in my early 20s, and hosting a morning show. One of the favorite groups that we used to play was Gun Hill Road, a group that was named after that famous thoroughfare in the Bronx. And I was their champion. I played them all the time. I thought they were great. Little did I know that, 45, 50 years later, I'd be a member of the band because I've known them over the years, joined the band, and we've been putting out records that have been getting tremendous interest on talk radio and on the internet because they're songs about issues. We have one out called Idiots, and its premise is that idiocy is destroying democracy. We have one song with a great music video called I Know You're Real, which is about animal welfare and why we should respect animals. And we have a brand new one now called I Got a Line in New York City, which is about the pain of being a young upstart Broadway actor and not being able to make it. I got a line. This poor guy, he finally made it to a play, a small off-Broadway play in Queens, and he got one line. So I got a line in New York City. It sounds like he is a druggie. And the one line is, sorry, sir, we're about to close. He's a bartender. And then his play closes after a couple of days. We did the song, all of the visuals on this song were generated by artificial intelligence. Wow. It's spectacular. As a matter of fact, I hope I can, at the end of the conversation, I could tell everybody how to see it on YouTube. It's kind of a cool, jazzy, horn-driven song, very similar to some of the theme music that you use coming in and out. Very, very, they call it genre-bending music. It's a little jazz, a little Dixieland, a little blues. I'm the lead singer. I kind of croak my way through it. But the words are interesting, but the images are fantastic. And they're strange. It's this alternate look at New York City with all kinds of weird characters and technology. And we worked a very long time with artificial intelligence, finessing it to come up with these images that go along with the song and its narrative. So it's called I Got a Line in New York City. And people can get to it by just saying to their computer, tapping in, I got a line, IGOTALINE, IGotAline.com, and see what I'm talking about.
Very cool. I think it's pretty cool to be a fan of this band and then meet them through the years and then eventually become a member of the band. I think that's a really kick-ass kind of story.
It's a great story. It's like one of these stories, and I didn't realize it was going to be a great story. It took a long time for me to realize that my relationship with them was such that I was suddenly a member of the band. I was in the studio with them. I was helping them write songs. I wrote a couple of songs. All of a sudden, I'm performing, and I'm now an official. I have been for a couple of years now, actually a few years. I'm an official member of a band that I used to be a DJ playing on the radio, and it's not the main highlight of my career, but it sure is the highlight of my fun. You have no idea how much fun this is.
I could only imagine.
I'm having a ball. I'm having so much fun, and it's very creative to be able to use the medium of music to talk about subjects that are interesting. And I can't tell you how gratifying it is that all of my my colleagues in talk radio seem to find it of interest and have either talked to me about it or played it to the level that we've had tens of thousands of downloads around the world on some of our songs. But I'm excited about this one because it deals with the visual element and the whole idea of finessing computers to create images that you want them to do, because they won't do it exactly the way you want. It's like some people get the facts they need quicker in Google or with Siri than others based on how they finesse the computer, what you say to the computer to do. And then the computer tries to come up with something that will be reasonably close to what you were hopeful for. But back to the artificial intelligence, I'm weird about this. I find myself, when I talk to Siri, actually worrying about what she thinks of me. Is that crazy?
Yeah, that is crazy.
I say, thank you, Siri. She doesn't say anything. And now I don't know if you've noticed, but Siri has attitude. You go, I'm not going to say it because she'll come up on my phone. You say, hey, Siri. And she goes, yeah. She just did it. I have my phone. She's there. She's right next to me
Michael
talking
Harrison,
to me now.
let everybody know how they can watch this AI video where you are the rock star.
www.igataline.com. igataline.com.
www.igataline.com, igataline.com. Check it out. And, of course, check out talkers.com to check out Talkers Magazine. Michael Harrison, I really appreciate you coming on board for National Radio Day. I really enjoyed the conversation. And let everybody know how they could follow you on social media.
They can't. I don't do social media.
Lucky them. igataline.com. How's that for a line?
Yeah,
Terrific.
but isn't that interesting? A guy like me with the media involvements I have, and I don't do social media, maybe there's a lesson to be learned by that. Maybe we'll be on another time, and I'll talk to you about my views of social media, but that's
Sounds
another
good to
story.
me. Thank you, sir. You are a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot, and a rock star.
Thank you, Rich. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Likewise. All right, folks, more to come straight ahead. We continue our discussions on National Radio Day, the news of the day, your opinions, and more. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Even as we're working through navigating, litigating, explaining every detail of Trump's legal issues, the challenge here is that the positions that the core candidates and leaders of the Republican Party have on issues people care about, whether it's access to voting, choices about your own health care, all of these crazy, wackadoo cultural debates about gay marriage. First of all, gay marriage is the law of the land. It's out of touch with the public, and that is a core problem for the party.
That is Jen Circleback Psaki, Silent P, of course. Now, Jen Psaki was the White House press secretary prior to Karine Jean-Pierre. And Jen Circleback, I think she's wrong, right? And the reason I think she's wrong is I'm looking at, there's polls out there, right? And there's polls that find that the majority of American adults believe that gender is determined at birth. So when she says that these crazy cultural things are off the wall, I think she's just inaccurate, right? Let's look at this one here. Washington Post and poll they did, I don't know, May of this year. Listen to this. 57% of American adults believe gender is based on sex assigned at birth. 43% say a person could change their gender later in life. 53% of 18 to 34-year-olds believe that gender is based on birth sex. That's a big number. 53% of people aged 18 to 34. So more than half in the age group that really promotes this stuff. Then you've got 47% believe that one can change their gender later in life. So is Jen Circleback Psaki on the money? I'd say absolutely not. Anyway, straight ahead, you've heard the term, you're a great American, my friend. Well, that comes from our buddy, Bill Cunningham, the great American himself, former Ohio Assistant Attorney General and an amazing broadcaster, two-time Marconi winner. He's coming up next. Don't miss it. Bill Cunningham with me, Rich Valdez, right here on America at Night.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Your liberty-loving Latino amigo, happy to be here with you. Hour number 2 of the program. Feel free to give us a call if you want to join our late-night national town hall conversation. The number is 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And President Trump's legal team is looking to start the trial in 2026. Meanwhile, Fani Willis and the rest of these prosecutors are really trying to nail him a lot sooner than that. Today, all the talk of the town was how he was threatening this one and threatening that one, and it was quite the spectacle on the cable channels, and we'll get into that a little bit later. I also wanted to remind you that President Trump has bowed out of the debate and said he's going to sit down with Tucker Carlson for a Tucker on Twitter interview rather than go to that. I think that's an interesting take because he's going to split the audience, of course, and that's exactly what he wants to do, I'm sure. And let's see, there was another story I wanted to share with you. It was actually a factoid that I saw here. Nearly half of United States adults say they sometimes or often get news from the radio. And, of course, I'm talking about radio facts because it's National Radio Day. And this is the day that's set aside. Today's not National Radio Day, but it's on Sunday. And since we're not live on Sunday, I wanted to bring in a few people to talk about that today. And being that it's National Radio Day, I wanted to bring in somebody who's a 2-time Marconi Award winner. He's a former assistant attorney general in Ohio. I've seen him. This is how I know of him. He was the host of the Bill Cunningham Show, a TV show, daytime TV show, talk show, out of New York City, and of course he's an amazing radio broadcaster on WLW. He is known as the Great American Bill Cunningham. Welcome, sir.
Rich, how are you?
I am fantastic, sir. Happy to have you on the show. So I wanted the audience to hear a little bit about your storied career, in all of it, but in particular we'll put some emphasis on radio as we go through. But I want to get, I guess, a really good sense of it because I think radio is one of those places where there's people that go to school for radio, there's people that don't go to school for radio, there's people that end up in radio and they're just amazing at what they do because of the other things they've done in their career that have really kind of prepped them to be the broadcasters that they are. So let's start off with, this is the old Larry King time slot, so we'll start off with a Larry King-esque question. What's a nice kid from Ohio like you, doing in radio?
Well, Rich, it's accidental. I spent many years representing a whole bunch of criminals, and I still do that. I always like to have 1 or 2 pending cases. I kind of enjoy going down to the Hamilton County Courthouse, and I'll try a case every now and then. But I represented a bunch of police officers, the killers of some police officers, sadly. And over a period of about 3 or 4 years, I got the reputation as the guy to go to represent those who commit serious homicides. Began my adult life, as a criminal defense attorney. And so I would get invitations to go to a talk radio in Cincinnati or Columbus, Ohio, to talk about how does a nice young guy like you represent so many vicious people. And so the guy that was the program director on 55 KRC switched to 700 WLW, a legend named Randy Michaels. And he said to me, you represent certain people in talk radio. I want to hire a talk show host, one of my former employees, and bring him over to LW to do the evening talk show. And that guy's name was Alan Browning. And he said, let's work out a deal. And so I got a hold of Alan Browning, who was on the air for years in the evening. In fact, his main competitor was Larry King. And then Jim Bohannon. And you walk in the shoes of greatness, and I've listened to you. You've done a great job. And from that, we worked out a deal. And so on the night he was scheduled to appear for the first time in August of 1983, he kind of reneged on the deal, and I had to call Randy like at 8:30 at night and say, Randy, I have some bad news here. Alan's not going to honor the contract. I'm not going to represent him anymore. And he's not going to be there at 9 o'clock to do the talk show. He said, what? So we went back and forth for about 10 minutes. He said, well, Willie, that's my nickname, you get down there and you do the talk show. I said, wait a minute, Randy, I'm a lawyer and I've never done talk radio. And he said, well, you're a lawyer, get down there and start talking. I said, hey, I go down there on a Monday night. It was September the 1st, 1983. And since then, I've been at the same station on radio since September 1st, 1983. And in the beginning, I don't know if you had this experience, but I was terrible. I used to call my wife. I'd call my golfing friends. Hey, Mark, please call in. I'd call Penny. She said, I call people to have them call in because although it's different to be a guest than a host.
Oh, sure.
It looks easy. But believe me, and I think you know this, everyone says anybody can do that job. Well, no, they can't because
right.
it's different. And so I stuck with it. I built the law practice. And I was on 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. for 4 hours every night, Monday through Friday, which allowed me during the day, I kept my day job, which was an AG, and I still practice law. And over the years, I watched the metamorphosis of talk radio. In the beginning, you may not recall the first in the 1980s, but there was an equal time rule. So we were told, don't talk about politics, don't talk about sex, don't talk about current events. And so the first 4 years I was on the radio at night, I talk about urology, or I had a guest on about how to fix carburetors. If somebody had kidney stones, I'd have a guest on. You stayed away from controversy because equal time meant that if I put on a Republican, I had to put on a Democrat or a Libertarian. And so until 87, until Ronald Reagan got rid of the equal time and let it rip, that was the first ideation of talk radio. And then from like 87 to 95 was largely non-political, and we were free to talk about politics, but not many of us were really good. But someone like Rush Limbaugh came along in 1987, and then the scandals of Bill Clinton erupted talk radio. And I can recall going on with Geraldo Rivera like about 1997, 98 on this TV talk show, The Commandos of the Airwaves. There were 4 or 5 of us. We went to Chicago, and radio went through a different ideation, in your face, turning a phrase, walking up to the line, jumping over it, talking about politics and sex, getting on idiotic people to say stupid things. And that went on for a while until 9/11. Then once 9/11 happened, like the third wave of talk radio occurred, which was now we got to be serious. America is under attack. And so almost everyone in the country, 22, I can't believe it's been 22 years since 9/11. It was a serious matter. And so the in your face, turning a phrase, goofy stuff, that was over with, because we were under attack for 2 or 3 years. And so now we're in another. And then what happened also, there were so many conservatives in talk radio that Air America erupted. My friend Jerry Springer, who assisted me on my television show from Cincinnati, we first met like in 1975, 76. We were friends. And so he and some others, Keith Olbermann, et cetera, put Air America together. And that went on for several years in which there was competition between us and them. And now this new phase of talk radio is like almost advocacy. So over the last 40 years, I've been doing this on September 1st in about 2 weeks for 40 years. Wow. I've seen different waves of talk radio. And I think now it's as healthy and happy and as diverse as I've ever found it.
Folks, we are on with Bill Cunningham, the great American. What a story. We're going to continue that walk down memory lane as we reminisce and look forward to this Sunday celebrating National Radio Day. So don't go anywhere. Again, it's Bill Cunningham with me, Rich Valdez. Don't move a muscle.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I want to listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Folks, we're back with the great American himself. You know him from WLW, Bill Cunningham, and he was the host of the Bill Cunningham show. I used to see him on TV, and I thought, man, that's a great TV show because he had a different perspective, a different take. I was like, it's almost like this guy's from Staten Island, you know? The only other place to find conservatives in New York. Bill Cunningham, welcome back. I want to get your take on. We left off with the different iterations of talk radio that you've seen progress through your career of 40 years, and you left off with advocacy. Tell us about it.
Yeah. Well, what's happened in the last maybe 10, 12 years is that talk radio tends now to be more conservative, or conservatives tend to do a little bit better because the rest of the media, ABC, NBC, CBS, the New York Times, Washington Post, et cetera, tend to be very liberal. Late night television, whenever they get back to live TV, the Jimmys, et cetera, they're very liberal. And so it tends to be that conservatives, libertarians, which I think is at least half the American people, need an outlet for their feelings or advocacy that would indicate that what you're hearing on the mainstream media is not accurate. And so if NBC, Lester Holt and David Muir, if the New York Times, everybody was very, very conservative, then most of talk radio would be liberal because that's the counterbalance to what the dominant culture is. But to have a conservative viewpoint today is a little bit risky because of mistakes that one might make. If you say something politically that is over the line incorrect about a woman, about a gay person, about transgender rights, whatever it might be, it used to be for decades, nobody knew exactly what you said because you had to get a copy of the tape, and getting a copy of the tape was difficult because it came from the station. But now everything that Rich Valdez says, everything that I say, somebody has recorded it, or they have the ability to say, he said this about Al Sharpton, or he said this about Governor Newsom. And someone could twist or turn that into an issue of you're insensitive, it's racist, sexist, homophobic. And so today, I don't do anything near the talk radio of 15 to 20 years ago in which I could put on women who sold marital products of one type or another and use the kind of language that wouldn't even come close to flying today. And so talk radio today is alive and vibrant, but it's also dangerous. You can have groups coming after you to boycott sponsors or to send emails and picket outside the studios to get rid of someone who's effective. And I consider that in a sense to be a compliment because the more effective you become, the more you got to be careful not to try to offend. But in talk radio, Rich, we just can't be milquetoast. We can't be vanilla. We got to be one way or another. And I'm proud that you're doing well. And I'm proud that people at night, there are truckers, there's people in RVs, there's people in offices that want to hear a different take, a different viewpoint, because they're not hearing it out of the mainstream media. And they're not hearing it because of the fear of what happened at Target or what happened to Bud Light. You got to be careful what you say and what you do. And I don't want to live in a country where Republicans drink Michelob and Democrats drink Bud Light. I hope that's not where we're headed, but I fear we are.
Well, thank you, Bill Cunningham, and I agree with you. I think we have to mix it up, and of course we do have to be careful. And I think about that all the time. We just talked about that with Michael Harrison a little while ago. You know, he was saying so much creativity's disappeared in talk radio, and I think that's part of why, because you can't get that crazy. Just ask Stern.
You can't, and when you do, and then the employer many times feel as if, well, it's not worth it because of the perceived anger you're causing in some quarters. And it's good to have an employer that sticks with talented individuals. Michael Harrison has chronicled for decades in Talkers Magazine what's happening, and good and bad. And I think our medium, as long as the First Amendment remains in effect, we got a shot. But you have to have talk show hosts willing to take the risk and employers willing to stick with talent, because without talent, our business dies. And a talented person like Jerry Springer, he's a good man. He was a good man. And I like Jerry greatly, but we disagreed politically completely. But he was easy to talk to. He was friendly, and he believed in the First Amendment. And liberals should believe in it. Conservatives should believe in it. And we should live in a society where we can freely express our ideas without fear of negative consequences. I say the marketplace of ideas ought to be the place to resolve these things. And we used to sit down, Jerry Springer and me, we used to sit down and have a great time together. And right now, he'd be going nuts. Imagine this, Rich. What we have maybe in 15 months, on one hand, you have the Trumpster, who's a 91-count indicted felon out on bond. And on the other side of the fence, you have an old guy who's mentally declining, who had bags of cash his son picked up all over the world to put in his pocket. Those might be the two choices. And I'm going, my God, how did we get to this position? Of course, my choice would probably be the Trumpster, all things being equal. But we live in a difficult time with serious problems. The southern border and fentanyl, we have serious crime problems. We borrow $3 billion every day of brand new money to fund programs we can't afford. We're in a war in Ukraine that may cause nuclear holocaust. We ought to debate the issues and not the peccadillos of the two candidates.
I hear that. And speaking of that, the Trumpster says he's not going to the first debate. He's going to sit down with Tucker Carlson, and the rest of the guys are, I guess, going to get together and make it a pile-on Trump. What do you think? Minute to you.
Well, in ratings, I'll take Tucker. I'll take Tucker and the Trumpster over Asa Hutchinson any day of the week. So I would imagine Fox is not happy about the idea that the brilliant campaign genius of Donald Trump is going to counter-program in a way that's going to take away the complete audience. Why would he want to debate any of those characters unless something dramatic happens? And God forbid a stroke or a heart attack. Donald John Trump is the nominee of the Republican Party. And so and we're going to spend the next 15 months debating the 4 levels of indictment against him. Is she going to back off as she should and send it to federal court, which she will not? Alvin Bragg's there in New York City is criminalizing a paperwork situation, paying a porn star, not putting on your campaign finance stuff. That is stupid. His more serious charge is going to be the one in Mar-a-Lago, in which he's going to have Secret Service agents guarding him and his own lawyers, 3 of them, testify against Donald Trump. Now that's going to be a problem, but in that case, he's got a more reasonable jury. I mean, I can't imagine the Donald getting off in Atlanta or New York City or Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C., for every one Republican, there's 19 Democrats, and they all want to get him. It's all political, and that's the concern I have. But the Donald is brilliant in counter-programming against Fox News. He no longer cares for.
Folks, we're on with Bill Cunningham, the great American. Bill Cunningham, I want to thank you for being with us for National Radio Day and sharing some insight. I appreciate it. You are a great American, 2-time Marconi winner. God bless you, sir. You're a patriot.
Thank you, Rich, and please keep it going. Keep the lines open. Let's hear from the American people. May God bless you, and God bless America.
Amen. Folks, more to come straight ahead. We're coming right back with me, Rich Valdez, 833-4-VALDEZ. Don't go anywhere.
Oh, my liberty-loving Latino.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
You know, I'm a big fan of hip-hop, and this year begins the 50th anniversary celebration of hip-hop. They kicked it off last week on August 11th, and I wanted to, again, I'm a connoisseur of hip-hop, grew up around hip-hop, and wanted to bring in someone that I had the opportunity to work with on a red carpet event that was to help raise awareness for a couple of different charities, probably about 10 or 11 years ago. And extremely talented platinum recording artist, sold millions of records, toured the world. He's 1/3 of the band, the Lords of the Underground. His stage name, Do It All. His real name, Dupre Kelly. He's actually a sitting city councilman in Newark, New Jersey today. And he's with us right now to discuss, along with his cousin Fatima. And they've got a record that's coming out. We're going to talk about that in the next segment. But help me welcome Councilman Dupre Kelly, also known as Do It All from Lords of the Underground. Welcome.
What up, Rich?
What's up, my brother? So, it's so cool
Good
to
to
see
hear your voice, man.
Thank you, brother. Likewise. And it's great to see hip hop growing up, right? And I think you're like a real example of that, right? You
Right,
went from
right.
being a young guy, a young man. You started out as a rapper. You came up with Redman and Naughty by Nature and all the rest of the Garden State greats that came out of New Jersey, and you went into acting, and then you got into your community, right? And it was really from there, this love of your community, where you branched off into public service. So I want you to tell us the story, but you don't have to focus on the latter part. I really want to get part of the beginning part so people understand, how you got into hip hop to begin with.
Well, I mean, for me, Rich, you got to understand, like, even before I got into hip hop, I was into the community. I just didn't know how to label it. Hip hop is a culture where it's already talking about the community. It's talking about, the early hip hop. It talked about how do we get out of its ills, how do we get out of its vices, and some of the things that were happening for people of color, black and brown people in the community. Hip hop is something that you couldn't, if you look at the word just hip hop, it's, hip is a form of being in the knowing, being in the now, and hop is a form of movement. So if you even just put that together, it always defines the now movement. And the now movement is usually based off of young people, and then the young people have its certain gripes with elders and that type of thing and wanting to be accepted, so it always moved on that energy. And now hip hop is at its 50th year, 50th anniversary. And it's just an amazing time to see what taking the good part of something and turning it into a whole nother thing has come to.
Yeah, I mean, it's an amazing thing, and so you grew up in Newark, and you live in Newark again, obviously.
Right.
How did you connect with Lord Jazz and Mr. Funky to come up with this concept of Lords of the Underground?
Well, we met at Shaw University in Raleigh, North Carolina, where the university and college we all went to. And DJ Lord Jazz was the most popular DJ on the campus. So, when you're the popular DJ at a university or a college, they use you for most of the good parties. Lord Jazz was used for all of the good parties. And his best friend at the time, named Derek L.A. Jackson, we called him L.A. because he was from Los Angeles. And he was graduating. And he told DJ Lord Jazz that when I graduate, I'm going to work for my cousin, DJ Marley Marl. Marley Marl is a legend from Juice Crew, from Queensbridge. He's a legend in the game. And this was his cousin who was our DJ from Lords of the Underground, Lord Jazz's best friend. He was graduating a year before, and he told Lord Jazz to put together a hip-hop group. And Lord Jazz would always ask me to freestyle at all of the parties at Shaw University, and I would. And then somebody told him about another guy from Newark, New Jersey, Mr. Funky, and then he just put Do It All and Mr. Funky together and sent a demo tape to Marley Marl, to his best friend Derek, who gave it to his cousin Marley Marl, and the rest became history.
Amazing. So now you have this group. You guys tour the world. You sell over 1 million records. You become platinum recording artists. You release multiple albums, lots of hits during the golden era of hip hop. Definitely a well-known name for anybody who listens to 90s hip hop, and lived through that era. And you come back from college. I remember you started the community impact group that you have in Newark, and we're continuing to work in the community. And you made an attempt at getting into politics, and you put your toe in the water. Didn't go right the first time, but you kept building, and you came through strong for the win in a nonpartisan election. Tell us what that experience was like.
I mean, it's an amazing experience. Well, it is, and it was amazing experience. my manager, Hafiz Fareed, who managed Lords of the Underground, he's probably the guy who introduced me to what community is and what politics was and how to use your platform to better your community or at least add value to it. So early on, even before I was in Lords of the Underground, I was knocking on doors and asking people to come out for voter registration and how do we get the youth to tackle youth problems like teen pregnancy and things of that nature. So I was getting used to being in the community and doing it from a standpoint from being an activist early on. And then, fortunate enough, going to Shaw University, my group, Lords of the Underground, got discovered. And one day, I'm always wearing Newark on my hats or my shirts or what have you, my apparel, and I've been doing it for years. And one day, my manager, Hafiz Fareed, said to me, he said, "When was the last thing you did for Newark?" And I got defensive. So I was like, "Oh, I wear Newark on my hats, on my clothes. I'm always representing Newark in videos and on television." And he said, "Okay, that's marketing and promotion. But what was the last thing you've done for Newark?" And I just promised to myself that I will never be able to be stumped on that question again. From that day, I took my hip-hop money, put it into my nonprofit organization. My first nonprofit organization was called Drama Squad, where we went into the Newark public school system and put on plays for teen awareness when it comes to drugs, when it comes to any plight that a teenager would face. And I didn't really know what we were doing. We were just doing it just to show a different point of view or show the point of view of the youth. And then, that turned into me starting a nonprofit organization with two other people called 211 Community Impact that focus on literacy and education. And then that spawned into me being at the doorsteps of the residents and the people. And then the people starting to say, "We want you to be our voice," and that's what I did. I ran the first time, and we didn't win, but it wasn't a loss either because we built such a rapport, in the community. See, my thing is, I never considered myself a politician, and my team will always tell me, "Don't say that because you're in the game now," and I get it. I understand what it is, but my views is really just to help the people. However we do that, let's do that, but there's politics or politics and everything. So, community hasn't been a problem for me. I feel like I found my footing when it comes to governing, and then it's just the politics that is forever changing and varying.
Sure.
That's the part that takes a lot to navigate at times, especially when you're really out here just trying to help the people.
Trying to help your neighbor.
Yeah, that's
gotcha.
That's it. But no complaints, man. No complaints. I've been learning. The people, I've been present. I've been listening, and it's been going very well, man. I feel good. I feel good that we're making some headway.
Excellent. Hey, let me remind everybody who we're on with. Folks, we're on with Dupre Kelly. He's a Newark City Councilman for the West Ward, and he is a legendary hip-hop artist as we celebrate the 50th anniversary of hip-hop this year. And Do It All, as his stage name, Do It All and his cousin Fatima have written a record to honor their grandmother, Alma, on her birthday, and we're going to talk a little bit about that with her and him straight ahead. If you have a question for Councilman Kelly, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Do It All Dupre Kelly is a platinum recording artist from the legendary hip-hop group Lords of the Underground. And he's become a sitting councilman in Newark, New Jersey. Quite a feat. I think it's just a great testament as we look at the 50 years of hip-hop and how hip-hop has matured as a street culture to now that permeates, I think, most music today has, even if it's rock, they'll throw a hip-hop artist in there for a hook just because that's how big the culture's become. And his cousin Fatima and him, under the name The Cousins with a K and a Z at the end, they've released a tribute album to their grandmother, Alma, on her birthday, which was August 11th, just 7 days ago. Do It All, welcome back, Mr. Councilman Kelly. And tell us, what was the inspiration to do this album for your grandma?
Man, it's funny how things go when you just actually get to it. So my cousin Fatima, she has worked with people like Redman and Lady Luck and DMX and so many different people as background singing. And she said to me one day, cuz we never recorded together. I worked with all your friends and we never got into the studio together. And I said, you know what? Come to the studio, because I own a studio in Newark, New Jersey. And I said, come to the studio. And long story short, we got to having conversations in the studio sessions. And we realized through those conversations that we felt like that our grandmother was our guardian angel and that our grandmother was around us through our ups and our downs. And it got almost emotional. And we just said, let's record. And the next time we finished recording, we were 11 songs in. And we understood, we found out that our grandmother, whose name is Alma, was, that Alma means soul. And we got all the people who knew Alma in our family. And we just felt like that all of the energy that was around us at the time was us being, from our grandmother. And we wanted to just kind of just pay homage to that thing that brought us here, from our parents to us. And I felt like our grandmother Alma was in the room. She's born on 8/11, which is the birthday of hip hop. Her name means soul. Her granddaughters from Fatima and her sisters look just like her. And she sung. I heard she was a beautiful singer. We never got to meet her because she died from an aneurysm when my mother was 15 years old. Wow. And Fatima's father was 9, and their youngest brother was 5. And their youngest brother is the person who introduced me to hip-hop. So I felt like all of these elements that kind of played a part, it was just kind of a certain synergy that you couldn't explain if you wasn't part of its DNA.
Right. It's the importance of family, the importance of community. And I want to bring your cousin Fatima in to get her perspective on the project, being that you guys hadn't recorded before. Fatima, welcome. Tell us a little bit about your, what it was like recording this project for your grandmother and the importance of family.
Pretty much like Du said, we pretty much just kind of linked up together. It was kind of a, hey, just come down, let's record. There was no planning. There was nothing. And I always say this, and this is, I know it sounds weird, but he would just throw in the music. And as he would throw in the music, we would go into our separate little corners just to kind of write what we were going to write, because we never pre-planned anything. Everything was on the spot writing. So he would go to his corner and I would go to mine. And it was so unbelievable how we would, once we kind of started to compare notes and see what he had for the song and I did, we were almost right on target. There was hardly any changes that ever had to be made for every single song. There were times where we were kind of thinking the same thing. And there was one particular song on the album called Chosen that everything that night came together. My dad called, Dupre and was talking about things. And he was explaining how my grandmother was a beautiful singer. And we kind of took that audio and, just recorded it. Nothing was planned. Everything fell into place that needed to. And when we finally finished recording the song, it was like, oh my goodness, I felt like she was here. Her presence was here. So this isn't us. This is divine guidance. Everything is falling into place just because we're trusting in our gifts. We're trusting in the gifts that Dupre and I have, and how connected it is, and how much we are pouring into just the memory of our grandmother. We never met her, but her children are amazing. She must have been amazing.
Let me ask you a question. How can the audience that's listening, and this goes across America, how can they listen to some of the music on the album you did for Alma?
They can definitely it's on all DSPs. And what DSPs are is the digital service platform. So that means Apple Music, Spotify Music, YouTube. You can go to YouTube, which has a video. We're putting out a video every month. We did a video to every song, so they're coming great. So all the DSPs, and that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, everything.
Awesome. We're coming right back. I got to hit a quick pause right here, but we're going to come back with Do It All Dupre Kelly's Newark City Councilman and his cousin Fatima straight ahead. Don't move a muscle.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
So we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of hip-hop music, and with my good friend, he is a platinum-selling hip-hop recording artist, Do It All from Lords of the Underground. He's by night, right? And by day, he's Newark City Councilman Dupre Kelly. Councilman Kelly, welcome back. I want to wrap up with you, but I want I want everybody to know, if they want to learn more about your music or more about your role as a councilman, what's the website for them to check out?
They can always go for councilman information and community things. They can go to www.duprekelly.com. That's DUPREKELLY.com. And you can always hit me on Instagram or social media at Do It All. That's DOITALLDU. And that's for Facebook and Twitter, or X, excuse me. X.
Yeah, right.
And,
outstanding. Well, I just wanted to thank you because, there's things we agree with in life. There's things we disagree with in life. But it seems your commitment to your community and your family, I think, are more important than anything. And I appreciate it. God bless you, brother.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you, man.
My pleasure. And my best to your cousin Fatima as well. Folks, there's more to come straight ahead. We're running out of this hour, but we got a whole other hour to do Open Phone America. Don't go anywhere.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Your liberty-loving Latino amigo, happy to be here with you. Friday night edition of the program. This is hour number 3, known as Open Phone America. This is where you get to call in on any of the topics, whether you like the topic, you didn't like the topic, whether you agreed, whether you disagreed, or when you want to introduce your own new topic. This is your time to be heard. Give us a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Of course, that's Valdez with an S. And if you want to get at me and drop a comment on Facebook, Instagram, Truth Social, Getter, any of those social media platforms. The handle is at Rich Valdez. Again, Valdez with an S at the end. And lots of conversation tonight. We talked about National Radio Day, which is this Sunday. National Radio Day being celebrated on August 20th. We are honoring that today. And I wanted to make a big deal of it, at least let it not go unnoticed, because too many do, right? And I think radio, if you're listening to this right now, radio is important. It's something that still connects with lots of people. It's still in every brand new car, and it's how we do what we do, right? It's kind of how we connect every day, whether it's AM or FM or streaming, but it's still radio, and it's how we get together every day. And I think just life wouldn't be the same without it. So I'm a big proponent of radio for obvious reasons and others. Now, a couple of headlines I want to share with you. Yes, we know about President Biden's summit with Japan and South Korea, but this is a story I wanted to share with you. The conservative icon, James L. Buckley, died at 100 years old. James L. Buckley, dead at 100. May he rest in peace. Buckley's death in Washington, D.C. was the result of complications from a fall. His nephew, author, and political satirist Chris Buckley told the New York Times earlier today. Buckley's a New York native. He's the older brother of National Review founder William F. Buckley, and he will be remembered by many. So that is what happened on that front. Now, I wanted to switch gears a little bit and also discuss Maui, right? Not the Maui Wowie, but Maui in Hawaii. Now, Maui, there has been more than $5.6 million paid out to folks by FEMA. And, of course, many of you are thinking, how does that rival the money that's been sent to Ukraine? Well, of course it doesn't. And again, it shouldn't be a arms race with how much we can spend on places. I think it's about providing the service. But I get the point, and it's an interesting juxtaposition. But so far, they've doled out $5.6 million and counting. Now, this is an interesting one because I grew up eating this stuff, and of course you can tell. Hormel Foods, they've donated 5 truckloads of Spam, right? The spiced ham canned meat known as Spam as part of their response to the fire in Maui. And another company says that their request for water to fight the wildfire was delayed by several hours while the state consulted with farmers. This is an interesting story. I mean, interesting in so much as you would think that people wouldn't wait a couple of hours to get water to a huge fire. Literally, I mean, it looks like fire tornadoes were flying through the sky, and we're going to wait on water? Come on. But this Hawaiian company says that the efforts to divert water to fight the devastating wildfire last week were delayed for hours while a government agency led by a man who has pushed for water equity consulted with local farmers. Yep. The West Maui Land Company, which manages several agricultural and residential subdivisions along the water jurisdictions, says that it requested water the day of the catastrophic wildfire in Maui from this commission, the Commission on Water Resource Management, but was initially denied the request for several hours. The company alleges the reason that the reason for the delay was that the commission had to clear the move with local farmers. By the time the request was granted several hours later, the company says it was too late. The fire was everywhere. We followed the process. The process failed us. That's Glenn Tremble. He's an executive with West Maui Land Co. And I think he's right. I mean, you have to fight fire immediately. You can't sit there and say, well, we got to talk to the local farmers and make sure. Sir, people are dying. I mean, if you're going to lose this year's crop, you're going to lose this year's crop, but we're going to save 100 and some odd people. Just absolutely disheartening. Folks, we're going to open up the phone lines for you. 833-482-5337 is the phone number, 833-4-VALDES. I recommend getting your calls in early. This way you're not on hold at the end of the show and you're stuck in the speed round where I try to get to as many people as I can before we wrap up. Again, that number, 833-482-5337. And let us go to, let's go to Inga in West Glacier, Montana on KOFI. Inga, welcome.
Thank you. I thoroughly enjoy listening to you.
Thank you.
I listened to you the first time with this kitty litter thing, and I hope you haven't dropped it. I've informed a lot of parents what's going on. I knew it was there, but you helped me cross the line. I'm not too popular right now, but that's okay.
Hey, sometimes doing the right thing requires you to do difficult things.
Yeah, I'm used to being alone. I've got 5 beautiful dogs. Who could ask for better friends?
What kind of dogs?
They're mixed. I have one. He's a pit. He's a year and a half. He will be a service dog. Another one is Blue Heeler, Border Collie Cross. Another one is Lab, Irish Setter, and a bunch of other stuff. Those guys were roaming that night. And I have another one that has pit and Mastiff in her, and she is awesome. And I have one singing hound.
Nice.
She's a coon hound, and they are awesome.
I bet. Let me tell you, dogs are terrific. I had a dog. My dog passed away, and every now and again, matter of fact, right now, my brother comes back next week from Italy. So I've been taking care of his pit mix. It's a rescue, and he's a fun little guy. You know, doesn't really get in the way too much, but sometimes he gets overexcited and he just wants to be involved in everything. But yeah, dogs are fantastic. I'm a big dog lover. As long as, you know, they're not really long-haired, because then, you know, I tend to get some allergies. But Inga, thank you for your call, and thanks for listening to the show. And yeah, that episode that we did where we spoke with Jane in New York with the kitty litter in the schools, absolutely crazy stuff. I'm glad you're involved in your school board. And we're going to continue with your calls straight ahead. We have calls from Delaware, from Washington State, and another one that I just can't make out just yet. So we're more to come straight ahead. Don't go anywhere. It's America at Night with me, Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, after following up on his comment of no comment, Joel Baboso Biden, President Biden, says that he was eventually going to make his way to Hawaii. And I'm glad that he is, and I'm glad he's not saying no comment anymore and taking this a little bit more seriously. And he did make some more empathetic comments. I'm glad that he did. But it doesn't change the fact that the government in Maui seems to have really screwed this up, whether it was people saying, oh, I've got to check with farmers before we get this water, or the air raid siren guy, or whatever it was, the tsunami siren not sounding off and then saying, you know, no, it was the right thing to do because we didn't want people running toward the fire. Look, come on, bro. If there's like a riot in a building that you're in and you need to alert somebody, wouldn't you pull a fire alarm? Or would you say, well, I mean, if you pull the fire alarm, the sprinklers might go off, the guys that are fighting, you know, it's an emergency, right? And I think you need to do what you can in those emergent moments. Getting so technical to say, yeah, I didn't want them running towards the fire. People aren't stupid. It seems like, you know, maybe this is why I didn't last in government, because I worked in government and I never thought that I knew more than people knew. Why would I think I know more about you for your life? That doesn't make any sense. But that's lamentably what happens. in government all too often. Let's go to Matthew. He's in Tri-Cities, Washington on KHHK. Is that right, Matthew?
Hey.
Are you there?
Yep.
Welcome.
How are you?
You're on with Rich Valdez.
Awesome. How are you?
Fantastic. It's a great Friday.
Good. Yes, great Friday.
What's on your mind?
I'm thinking that you can't really point the finger at too many people, especially the farmers, because they have the water rights and they are in control in there. And it takes time to divert water. It takes pumps. It takes a lot. I mean, it's not just an instant process. And
right. Well, all the more reason to not wait a couple of hours to try and do it. Right. And I think that's my criticism here is if you know you need water and you know you're trying to do it, don't wait a couple of hours just to talk to somebody. I mean, you got to make a move. Right. I mean, let's see. If my car is parked at or near a fire hydrant and there's a fire, there's not a fireman on the planet that's not going to take his axe and break my window and run his hose right through my car if he needs to, right? Let's say there's not enough hose to get over the car or under the car. And that happens all the time, right? This is why firemen have really cool axes and they get to do things like that. So I agree with you that I'm not here to castigate the farmer per se. I am here to say the government needed to respond better and sooner and with more an emergent tone, and lamentably they didn't. Right? They were very lackadaisical, if we can use that term to show their response. And I think that's wrong. Right? It's wrong when you have over 100 people dead, and I don't think they did it on purpose, but that doesn't change anything, right? The idea of having government, their number one job is to protect the public. And if that's your number one job and you can't get it right, then maybe you shouldn't do it. And kudos to the guy who just quit, right? The guy, Mr. Andaya, who was the emergency management coordinator that quit last night. He resigned his position after saying, well, I didn't, announce the emergency through the sirens at the beaches and whatnot because I didn't want people running toward the fire. And while I respect his opinion and I disagree agreeably, I think it's wrong. And I think they should have made all the noise they can. They should have sent text messages, blasts, emergency broadcast system, whatever it was. Let everybody know it's not a drill. Get out. There's a huge fire in Maui and you got to get away from the fire. Get out of your house. Don't think it's going to skip your house. It's taking everything out. And that's really the point that I'm making. And again, I understand this hasn't happened before, so it's new. 100% get that. But it makes it difficult, Matt.
Expect the best, prepare for the worst, I suppose.
Right.
I mean, we know it has lightning storms and stuff out there. I just don't think that people realize that all of that brush and mismanagement, it is a tinderbox. It's ready for a fire. I mean, it's dry underneath, and then as soon as it gets hot, the moisture's gone out of the trees, and the whole thing just goes up. And then they had high winds to boot, and the helicopters couldn't do anything with their water. And I don't know that the farmers would have made much difference either because the fire was growing so fast. And
you're probably right on that. I mean, from the video I saw, I didn't see anything but God Almighty stopping that fire. The thing that I saw was insane. There was like clouds of fire, tornadoes that looked like they were made of fire. It was just something surreal, what I saw. So, yeah, I think you're probably right. Matthew in Tri-Cities, Washington, KHHK. Big shout out to you. Thanks for calling in. Hopefully you'll call in again soon. And we're going to continue. Let us go. Where do we go now? Let us go to Frank in Evergreen, Montana, KOFI. Frank, what's going on in Montana?
Oh, there's a lot of fires completely surrounding this valley. In fact, there's fires going all the way up to the Canadian border, bordering the west side of the Glacier Park area, and then the other side of Whitefish, My gosh, it's everywhere. It's all the way down to Sealy Lake. Oh gosh, Hot Springs, Plains, Libby area is just the yak, and it's a tinderbox. And then on the Canadian side, it's just as bad. But people are going into order to just get out of the woods completely, abandon going home, and go to Columbia Falls, Montana, and they're setting up kind of like a triage at high school, in the gymnasium, places like that. And it's
Are you
it's
safe from this
devastating.
fire, Frank?
Oh, yes, definitely. Yes, my plan is to be safe.
I tell you, I've never been through that experience. The worst I've ever experienced was the Canadian fires that came here and made our sky here in New York orange, and the whole, 3 days worth of smoke that we had to breathe in. And I thought that was insanity. I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe this is so bad. I can only imagine what it's like being up there and feeling the intensity of the heat and losing people and property, and just absolutely terrible what's going on there. Stay safe out there, Frank. I don't know the answer to all this stuff. My brother always tells me, you really think they're just burning stuff, that the fires are just wild? You don't think people are starting these with laser beams and this and that? And reality is, whether they are or they aren't, really doesn't change the outcome, right? It's still the same thing, whether the government secretly controls the weather and uses laser beams or what they call directed energy weapons, or anything else. It's still the same outcome. People are dying and being displaced from where they live, and massive parcels of land are being burnt to a crisp. And it's sad, and it's something you can't control. There's nothing you can't pull out your garden hose and start shooting at one of these fireballs of tornadoes that are coming at you. I mean, it's just crazy, the stuff that I've been seeing. So I don't. To me, the reason, the why, isn't as important as the what. And the what is really what's happening here. People are being displaced and dying, and it's sad. Folks, we're going to get to the rest of your calls straight ahead. 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. Give me a call. This is Friday night, so that means we're off until Monday. You'll catch the best of on the weekend. And we do have a few people on hold, but there's a couple of lines open. So happy to chat with you. Give me a call, 833-4-VALDEZ. Don't go anywhere. I'm coming right back. I'm Rich Valdez.
Congratulations on just an amazing show. I know you've worked so hard in the industry, and nobody deserves it more than you do. So I'm happy to see you really succeeding here. It's awesome.
America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Today, we've made history with the first ever standalone summit between the leaders of our three countries, as well as our commitment to meet together on the leader level annually and to have all our relative cabinet member people meet on a regular basis from this point on. Not just this year, not next year, forever. That's the intention.
Okay, of course, that is Robert L. Peters. You may know him better by his real name, President Joe L. Barboso Biden. His pseudonym, of course, is Robert L. Peters. And that was a big bombshell that came out yesterday, that President Biden, irrespective of his meetings with the Chinese or the Koreans or the South Koreans or the Japanese, he's still using fake names when he's dealing with Ukraine and having email exchanges with his son, Hunter Biden, who he claims he never did any business with and was never in business with and never spoke about the business. Robert L. Peters was also known as Robert Peters, also known as Robin Ware, also known as J.R.B. Ware, which I just think is just so funny. But yeah, that's not as funny as, like I said yesterday, Pierre Delecto, which was Romney's fake name, but He's got a fake name. They're looking at $20 million that were spread out to various members of the Biden family. And all he does is just continue to shrug it off. Let's go to Matt in Eastern North Carolina, WTKF. Go right ahead.
Hello, Rich. How you doing?
I'm doing great, my brother. Happy Friday.
Yes, sir. You too. Well, I wanted to told your call screener, Art, Wednesday, I saw at my neighbor's house. I don't watch TV at home. I'd rather listen to your show. And, well, I heard on a news show, I think it was Fox, I don't want to name names, this doesn't matter, all the lies that Biden told since the 80s with the plagiarism to the current day. And the next one was, it was a whole panel of people talking about it. And then it was about, do you think Trump should debate the first debate? I said, yes. Don't you think?
Again, I think, look, I'd love to see Trump on stage with those guys and do what Trump does, but I think there's more opportunities for it. And I think here he had to choose, right? Do I go up there and do I embarrass these guys and do what he's skilled at? Or does he totally blow them away with a competing event? And that's what he's doing. He's getting with Tucker Carlson, and he's going to have an interview with Carlson where they're going to rival this Fox debate. And no question, again, whether, who's going to have the bigger audience. I'm guessing the debate will probably have the bigger draw, but they're going to have a massive problem in people wanting to watch Trump and Carlson as opposed to wanting to watch the debate. And that, of course, is Trump's MO here, where he's just always a step ahead of him, and which is why I really like the guy. I have to tell you, I think, this is a guy that understands things at a different level. He operates outside of the box. He thinks outside of the box. And I think that's why he does as well as he does. Matt.
I love him. I got a big Trump flag flying in my front yard.
Amen, brother. Let me tell you, I think this idea to not show up at the debate was a smart one, because he's the only one that could really pull it off. Right? Any of his challengers there, if they were to say, whether it's Chris Christie or Mike Pence or Ron DeSantis or Ramaswamy, any one of them, if they were to say, I'm going to go have a sit down with Tucker Carlson, they'll get the good Tucker Carlson audience. But nobody's going to not watch the debate because they didn't go. But now you put Carlson and Trump together. I mean, just look at how big the Tucker Carlson Ice Cube video was, right? He did an interview with the rapper Ice Cube, and it was huge. It was huge. So I think Trump is nailing this one. He's knocking it out of the park, even though he's not going to be there. He's going to be sharing with the American people what his vision for America is, what they expected to get from the debate, minus the 5, 6, 10 guys that are going to be there, trying to rip him to shreds if he were there in person. So now maybe they can rip each other to shreds and we can hear some ideas. And I'm looking forward to that. Anyway, thank you, Matt, for the call. I appreciate it. You're a great American, as Bill Cunningham would say. God bless you. And big shout out to everybody on WTKF. We're coming back to your calls and more. We got calls from Florida, from Indiana, Delaware, and more. 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-482-5337.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Voted best head of hair in live late night radio 6 years in a row. It's Rich Valdez.
All right, familia, welcome back. our number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. We continue with our journey across the country, checking in with folks from all over the place. Let us go to, not Florida, Wilmington, Delaware. Check in with our buddy Doc. Doc, go right ahead.
Rich, got a scenario for you. I
All right.
want your reaction. What happens if President Biden has an impeachment inquiry in the House that has legs? And what happens if all of his corruption is brought out? As I've told you in the past, he's been corrupt through his entire career here in Delaware. His whole family is a criminal enterprise. I told you the folks that wrote about that in the Nation magazine, the Philadelphia Inquirer, Joe DiStefano. Okay? You know about that. We've talked about this before. What happens if President Trump, however, is indicted and is convicted prior to the convention, and then the whole thing is thrown out by the Supreme Court? What about those two scenarios? Your thoughts, sir?
Sure. Okay. And the first one, it would be Kamala Harris. And I think that it would probably cut a deal. At some point, I think somebody would say, we should probably get Robert F. Kennedy involved, because I think he's a more saleable candidate than Kamala Harris. I don't know if that's going to, in fact, be the case, but that would be my initial intention. I believe that Gavin Newsom is already fundraising. He's in the wings, ready to jump in one way or another, and we'll see how that plays out. Now, in the other one, again, Trump getting convicted, if I think he could, let me tell a little story. A guy named Bill Musto. Bill Musto was mayor of a town called Union City, New Jersey, and he was arrested on political corruption, as far as I know, and he was on the ballot, and it was too late to take him off and put another candidate on. And guess who won the election? That's right, Bill Musto. Bill Musto won the election, and he did not serve from jail, but Trump actually could serve from jail, right? It's a different statute because it's, a local election versus president of the United States, which is spelled out in the Constitution. So the reality is, if they have a case where they can convict Trump, he still can serve. If you're intimating that Americans won't vote for a guy that's in prison, that remains to be seen. I think that's, that's a fair question. I just don't know the answer to it. But I do believe Trump has a lot of gravitas right now. And I hear from people. I know that there are some very conservative, older Christians. There's others that are like moderate, that are just, they're not big on Trump. They don't want the drama. They don't want the static. They just want somebody that will go along to get along. It gives people peace. It removes their anxiety if somebody that would allow the deep state to continue doing what they do, and just somebody that pretends that they're on your side. I don't think we need that. I don't think we can afford that in America anymore. So I think you really need somebody who's going to take the bull by the horns. And I don't know that we have a ton of candidates that are willing to do that. And I think that's where the problem lies. So we'll see. I think Trump can win, and I think he legitimately could run the country from prison. And of course, I just don't think that's going to happen. I think it eventually goes to the Supreme Court and gets the appeal process, and that's that. But we'll see, right? And I think that's why they chose Jack Smith for this, because he has a record of getting people convicted and then those things getting overturned eventually. And I think that's exactly what they want, because they know that they could never really file these charges, even though they did really file them, but they know that they'd never really stick. So they need this for the sake of theater. They need it for the sake of the election in order to divert votes and to interfere the way they have. Anyway, Doc, thank you. Good question. Good scenarios, both of them. I appreciate it. Have a great weekend. Godspeed to you. We're coming back to the rest of your calls and more. 833-482-5337.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. and he's breaking it down. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, familia, we're back, and we're going to continue. We're wrapping this thing up. We've got calls from all over the place here. What do we got here? Arizona, Florida, Indiana, New York. Talk about a cross-section of this country. Let us go to Phil, Sarasota, Florida, WENG. Go right ahead.
Yeah, how you doing, brother?
Pretty
listen,
good.
That whole fire over in Maui, it doesn't make sense. You know, I was a volunteer on an apartment down here, and I fought more brush fires than anything else, and it's scary. It's scary, especially when it crowns and it gets in the treetops, and it goes from treetop to treetop over you. But that fire there, my God, they got the Pacific Fleet is there on Maui. They got Air Force Base there on Maui. They got Army there on Maui. And yet none of those places who are probably set up to get incoming aircraft that aren't real and everything else, they couldn't see the smoke. They couldn't warn it. They couldn't warn nobody either. So that just doesn't make sense. Now, I got a conspiracy theory for you. As bad as it is with Ukraine, okay, and Russia said, Nikita Khrushchev said in 1956, he said they would take over America without firing a shot because they would take over from within.
Right.
We'll destroy ourselves. And that whole thing, but see, it's like history repeats itself. Those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it. And in Vietnam, Truman started out sending money in. Eisenhower started sending weapons in. Kennedy started buying it up, and they actually approved the killing of the South Vietnamese president. Johnson, the same thing. He sent troops in everywhere else, and Nixon, he came along, really kind of messed his own life up. But see, we're doing that again. We're putting money into Ukraine. Now we're going to send weapons. It's like repeating itself. We're going to get drawn in to something that is crazy. And, you know, anymore, you just don't know.
Well, listen, Phil, I get what you're saying, and I agree with you that this is literally the system that we live in, right? We live in a system where we have this house of cards that is our economy, right? Where we sell money, we print money that isn't worth anything really, except the debt that we sell against it, and our good name and our military might. And every now and again, we flex this military might to remind people that we have it so that we can remain in the game. And this is why there are people out there that say that we're imperialist, capitalist pigs and they hate our guts. And I agree that I think we could do this without the fighting. We could do it. Occasionally, you're going to need to fight because that's what happens when you're the big guy on the block. But by and large, I think we can do what Trump did when he was president. He fed the military-industrial complex. He had a huge military budget, made sure the military had what they needed, and also made sure we didn't use it, and strove for peace in everything that he did, and the Abraham Accords and his dealings with Little Rocket Man, right? So, I mean, I think that was a very cautiously optimistic approach that he used to make sure we had what we needed, but we didn't use it. And it made all the sense in the world to me. Biden has to feed this machine and doesn't want a war here, doesn't want a war anywhere. So he's thinking, wow, proxy war. We just keep giving them weapons in terms of aid, and people will support that because they'll feel badly about the Russians encroaching on Ukrainian land. And it's a win-win for me. I get to look like a hero, and I still get to feed the military-industrial complex, which wants their money. I think the problem is they're not getting enough of it, and they want more, and they want more. So looks like a bad look on Biden for me, and I think that's really what this boils down to is who's going to feed that beast and not feed that beast. Thank you, Phil. I appreciate it. Big shout-out to everybody on WENG. Let us continue. Let's go to Carol, Bedford, Indiana, WBIW. Carol, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez. Welcome.
Yeah, first of all, I enjoyed listening to you. I listen to you every night. You seem like a really nice man. Okay. I just wanted to tell you that. I hadn't told you that before. Anyway, my daughter went to one of the Hawaiian Islands about 4 or 5 years ago. I don't remember which island, but I was very surprised when she told me one of the main supples, you know what you know what I'm talking about, one of the main things they ate there was Spam. And then there was another meat product. So normally, if in the past, I wouldn't have thought that much what you announced earlier, how much the hormels and all that Spam.
Right.
But it's actually one of the staples. That's the word I was trying to think. One of their staples.
Look at that.
And
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. Well, that's what she told me, and she wouldn't lie to me about something like that. But it was and I don't know which island. I'm not saying that's every island, but the way she said it. Well, she said it's because of how much it costs to send fresh things. You know,
I see. Yeah, because it's an island and they have to import everything. That could be it. I don't know, but I do know I grew up eating a ton of Spam, and it was cheap and it was salty, and it went good with white rice. And when you're a big family that doesn't have a ton of money, that stuff comes in really handy. Thank you, Carol. I appreciate it. Bedford, Indiana, WBIW. Big shout out to Carol and everybody out there in WBIW land. We continue. Let us go to Pat in Sedona, Arizona, listening online to Rich Valdez, AmericaAtNight.com. Pat, go right ahead quickly.
Okay. Well, Rich, what I want to get to is you've been talking about this thing there the Republicans are having their little debate, and Trump's not going there. What I think, the party I think a lot of us are looking for is a party that works together. If those Republicans and Donald Trump could work together and point what they're going to do for America, I think that's the party people want to vote for. And that's everybody. Mm-hmm. That's Democrats, that's Republicans, and also the independents. They're looking for a government that will work together. Even if it's a Republican,
I think you're right, Pat. And here's part of what I want to say is I think that's part of the reason why people initially voted for Joe Biden, because he said, I'm going to be a uniter. I'm not going to be a divider. I'm going to do blah, 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 blah. And clearly, I think we've seen the country become more divided under Biden than ever before, in my opinion. But that's where we ended up. So you're right. And I think that Trump has been very conciliatory since announcing in November. I think his rhetoric has been very, very united, if you will. It's kind of shifted gears with more indictments, but he hasn't been very, very sharp with anybody, right? He's sharp in what he does, but he hasn't been really short-tempered, is my point. He throws a zinger here and there. So I think he's on it, and I think should he win the nomination, he will focus on that a little bit more. But that's what these debates are for, to see what's out there. Linda in Albany, I'm sorry. The music means they are sending me home, and that means you're at the top of the list for Monday. I appreciate it. Big shout out to WGDJ in New York. Take care, good night, and God bless. I am Rich Valdez. Hasta la próxima. Until the next time, keep it locked right here on this station and have a great weekend.